here's my next question. What's your comfort food and wine pairing?
Well, it would have been different before I met my wife. Now, certainly the comfort food. It's a really simple. Well, it's not simple to make, but uh, it's it's not it's not like, oh my god, that's such an exotic and crazy thing. She she cooks a lot of Korean style foods, and some of them are more Korean than others. But probably the one that I would claim as a comfort food now is kimchi fried rice. The funny thing about kimchi fried rice is that it's what most Korean women use to kind of clear out the refrigerator of leftover bits and pieces of this and that. So they make the kimchi fried rice, and then it depends on what you had recently. It's going to have chicken in it, or maybe have pork in it, or maybe have beef in it, or maybe some seafood in it. But whatever, it all gets, and then to kind of really make it extra special, they do a fried egg over the top, and that is just I probably could I could probably eat that almost every day. And so, what's the wine pairing with that? Well, it's not super kimchi-ish. It has a nice level of kimchi flavor, but it's not. So I think it's pretty flexible with wine. I think, but I probably drink more Pinot with it than anything. I really like the freshness of Pinot Noir goes really well with it, and the uncertainty of exactly what's going to be in it. I mean, in Korea they use spam a lot for it, so it could be anything in between.
I could never. I'm not the spam kind of guy. What was the most memorable wine dinner you attended or spoke at, as far as food wine?
Done so many of these. So by memorable, you ask it in an interesting way, not necessarily I guess what you really want is what are the most memorable wines I had at a wine dinner, but
It
and
could be. It
probably
could be. It could be your wine at a wine dinner where the chef just totally nailed it and blew
yeah.
you away, or it could be somebody else's wine, or just what was something that just made you say, "Oh my God, this just totally rocked my world," and I'm always going to remember this one.
Well, you I touched on one. The one with the 69 Latache was pretty memorable in terms of the wines. I don't remember anything about the food that night, but I'll tell you the probably the best pairing that I ever experienced. We did this special dinner in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, for their big wine auction. It benefits their, I think it's uh, the music program there. I think it's a summer music program. I think it's an orchestra. But anyway, uh, and we were paired with Gary Danko, a chef from a restaurant in San Francisco, but he had worked at a couple of wineries before he started his own restaurant. I noted that just recently, Gary Danko lost his one Michelin star. As far as I'm concerned, the guy should have three Michelin stars. It's a beautiful restaurant. It's amazing food, but he absolutely nailed the food wine pairings. We sent him the wines in advance. This was Patz and Hall days.
Mhm.
We sent the wines in advance. He had his sommelier come and help pour the wines, and it was just an amazing evening with each wine just sang next to the food. Uh, and I recount this fairly often is that a lot of times the chefs think of it as a chance to really step out and do something crazy, right? But instead, Gary, Chef Danko, really decided to scale it back and let the wines be the centerpiece of the evening. And I think that was an amazing, an amazing and absolutely the right way to go in terms of a wine dinner. So that was probably the best wine dinner I've ever been part of. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, if you can believe it.
Always wanted to go there. Also, do a little bit of hunting up there. What
Well,
was
there's some great hiking too. I mean, they got the Tetons. It's not too far to excuse me, to Yellowstone, and so it's a beautiful area.
you fish or hunt at all?
I used to a long time ago, but I haven't had time to, unfortunately.
What did you fit? Which was it, that or both, or what did you go after? Was it more in your youth, or
Oh well, when I lived in Oregon, we used to sometimes go, fishing for trout in the river. I live near the Mackenzie River. It's a world class trout and salmon stream. Uh, so it was fun to go. I didn't really catch very much. I wasn't particularly good at it, but it was fun to get out and do that. And my stepfather was quite a hunter, so we went a couple of times, more than a couple of times, deer hunting, and even went over to Eastern Oregon and went elk hunting one year, which was pretty fun. But I I didn't see any elk. The other guys all got one, not me.
I tell people when it comes to deer camp, elk camp, the moment you pull the trigger, the fun ends and the work begins.
Yeah, I think that's true.
The excuse me. You also seem more from what I've read, more of a street salesman, not the scientist, even though your degrees in biology. And you mentioned in an interview that you have three different label names. For one example, that way, if people put all three of them on, it doesn't look like they're replicating or just doing all one winery. And I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting. I'm like, that's a brilliant approach. And I'm like, a street approach, not necessarily.
Yeah. Well, I've had to do some sales over the years, but my heart has always been in, uh, that my favorite things to do are walking around the vineyards, talking with the growers, being at the winery, being involved with the whole process of winemaking. That's what we do the other stuff so we can get to do that kind of thing. But it was more than just a clever marketing scheme. I really wanted, with the three different brands, I really wanted some separation because making Cabernet is different from making Pinot. It's different from Chardonnay. If I did Sauvignon Blanc, it would be different from making Chardonnay too. And the white blend for Terminum, that's Marsanne, Roussanne, Pic Pool, Viognier blend, that's not like making Chardonnay. Syrah actually isn't too different from making Pinot Noir, but it has its own twists as well. Uh, I would think that if you're approaching making Syrah like Cabernet, you're probably going to end up with a red wine that doesn't remind you too much of the Syrahs that you had from other parts of the world. But anyway, and because I wanted separation in terms of the way that I thought about the wines, I wanted them to have different names and actually be made at separate places uh, to create a distinction between them. So it's not simply Donald makes all these wines and then just throws different labels on it. They are different by virtue of, obviously, first of all, where the grapes come from, but also the way that we think about the wines and where they're made.
I noticed that your Cab, your Chardonnay, your Pinot Noir are all single vineyard. And you'd mentioned that earlier. And that's I think really neat because you're getting that sense of place and elevation.
Yeah, well, the Secret Door wines are single vineyard. The JML is a blend of multiple sites, so that's not a blend. And then I do with Chardonnay and Pinot, I do a Russian River Valley sort of blend as well. So the Chardonnay blend is called La Riviere. The Pinot Noir blend is called La Rousse, which is in French, Russian, and river, because it's all from Russian rivers. Uh, but and so and there's a reason for that too. I mean, it is a marketing reason because at Patson Hall when we did single vineyard designates, obviously they had the single vineyard name on them. But if we were selling a Napa Valley Chardonnay or later on it was Sonoma Coast Chardonnay, that became our regular Chardonnay. And I'm not making regular wines. I mean, nothing about the way that we're going about it in the vineyards or at the winery is the idea to try to make a regular Chardonnay or a regular Pinot. So add a name to it so that people have something else to call it besides regular. That's where that came from. And yes, it's probably a marketing idea, I think it's a reflection of an underlying fact. It's a way to help understand the whole premise of the program.
So here's the toughest question, and you might know this reference, and I actually made some people mad with this one.
Uh
I was excited when I found out you seem to be a slight science fiction nerd like myself.
oh.
Are you? If you are a Doctor Who fan, are you a Doctor Who fan, or
I've only watched a couple of them. No, not
are you
really.
familiar with the
I
TV?
know who he is. Yeah.
Okay. So I always generally say Doctor Who, but if you have a time machine and you can do a vertical of any wine you want in addition to your own, where everything has the same age because of the time machine. So now our true variable is just the vintage, not the vintage and the age.
Yeah.
What wine would you do, and who are a couple people you would do it with?
You're talking about, for example, it would be like I would choose like Mondavi Cabernet or something like that with
You could do
the,
every Mondavi reserve you wanted. You could do first
and they
growth.
would all be how old?
You could do well with the time machine. Think of it. You could do pre-phylloxera first growth from the 18th, 17th, 19th
Yeah,
century against post phylloxera first growth.
that's true. But basically, the question suggests that the choice should be someplace that's been making wine for a very, very long time. Since you have a time machine,
Absolutely.
so there's not much point in. I suppose you could pick like BV Private Reserve, which goes back to the 1940s. But I mean, yeah, if you could do something like that, but I think that it's a complicated equation because not only do you want to choose something that has a lot of history, where whether or not the wine is actually even available at the winery anymore, you could theoretically snag a bottle by going back in time and grabbing one. Uh, so I guess I would probably choose some French wines. Probably, the funny thing about Burgundy is that, with the exception of like DRC, most of them flip every few years as the families change and stuff. So there's not that kind of like I could go back 200 years and buy a some Burgundy producer consistently. So I guess it would have to almost have to be Bordeaux because those are the ones that have been around the longest, even though they've changed hands. Um, Probably is Petrus is so popular right now. I guess I would probably choose Chateau Lafite, uh, and I think it'd be kind of fun to taste the differences in how those wines were made over the years. I think that'd be really interesting, and I probably would choose them all at about 6 or 7 years of age, not 20 years of age that some people seem to think. I being a coming from production side of stuff, we're used to drinking wines really young. I think it'd be much more interesting to try, uh, let's say in 1895 at 5 years of age than than it would be at 20 years of age because things start to go towards a point on the horizon. I'd really like to see what those wines tasted like when they were young. Were they super tannic or were they a lot? Was there other grape varieties grown? I heard rumors that there were times where they would import Syrah from the Rhone Valley to beef them up a bit because they weren't making super dark wines. So I'd be kind of curious to try them at a younger age. But that's what I would, if I could use a time machine to snag wines from different times, I would absolutely choose a Bordeaux producer because of the long history that they have.
I think it would be fun, and thank you for not getting mad. I had somebody say you
Why
should.
would you get mad at that? You must not like wine that much if you get upset about questions like that. I mean, I said it earlier, and it's really true. I'm a California guy, and I really love California wines of all types. And so, I didn't used to do it quite this way. But when I go out to dinner, I won't ever buy French wines off wine lists. I'll buy something. I'll find something I can enjoy from California. I believe that people are, at least in the Napa Valley, I'm well known enough that people will look and say, What's he drinking?" And I think it's kind of a slap in the face if you're going out with friends and hanging out, and you think that the celebration wine comes from Italy or from Spain or from France. What are you thinking? You're in public telling the world that these wines are the wines you celebrate with, not California. I think you're crazy. You would never ever find a Burgundy producer doing that, ever. You'd never find a Northern Italian producer, ever. Oh, I'm going to celebrate tonight. I'm going to drink California Zinfandel. Hell no. What are we thinking?
That I don't know. I mean, I always say drink everything. I mean, in public, it's one thing.
That
I
is.
agree with you.
Oh, I drink French wines at home. I have friends. I have Francois Villard who does Terminum with me. Great guy. I love those wines from the Northern Rhone, and I'll drink them at home. But when you're in public and you're celebrating, or you're putting it up on social media, it just blows my mind. But people are going to do it anyway because we're silly Californians.
Well, I mean, yeah, it there's a lot of things I sometimes question. Now, now here's the thing. I've noticed that right now your wines are in Florida, Illinois, and California. Now, how do people purchase your wines if they don't
So
live in?
it's not available in Illinois.
No.
Florida, California, we're in a bunch of states. We're in Texas, we're in Arizona, one of my best markets is Hawaii, if you can believe that. Um, so we're in a bunch of states, but the best way, especially to get the single vineyard wines, which are really difficult to find, is to be on our mailing list, of course. And you can start by going to the Donald Patz Wine Group.com place that has links to all three of the brands and descriptions about all the wines. So DonaldPatzWineGroup.com.
And then
Where did it say I was in Illinois?
I was
Do
looking at
you,
your site and it listed Illinois and Florida.
huh? I don't know.
Yeah, well, part of it is I have 5.5-year-old twins, so sometimes when I'm doing this research, it's when they're in bed late at night.
Yeah, okay.
So I call it lack of sleep.
It's
So,
cool. I just am surprised.
but yeah, I'm gonna have to now. I'm gonna go back to your site and go. Did I read that right?
It was on my site. Oh, I guess I'm gonna have to go back and well, as a matter of fact, I'm meeting with the woman that does my websites. I think tomorrow. Maybe it's today. I gotta check. Yeah, tomorrow. Whoops, sorry. So I'm gonna ask her if we can go through that and make sure we get it right.
Well, I want way beyond what I promised, and I really appreciate you sitting down and talking. I hope if you're ever in St. Louis, we can meet face to
That
face.
would be fun. Yeah, that would be great, Ray. No, it's a pleasure. If you want to do something like this again, let me know. I'd be happy to do it again. Tomorrow is our first day of harvest, as a matter of fact. We're bringing in the very first Pinot Noir from Regina's vineyard, Regina Martinelli. And so we're kicking off the 2024 harvest. They told me they're going to start picking at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I told them I wasn't going to be there. But I'll be there when the grapes arrive at the winery, so we're ready to work.
How does now? I always try to ask. Okay, so I separate quantity and quality of the grapes as two different parts. How does the quantity of this vintage look, and how does the quality of this vintage look?
Well, it's tricky to figure out the quantities until you actually start picking. It's funny because it looks like there's not very much, and then suddenly things come in, and you're like, "Where did this all come from?" Or it looks pretty good, and then suddenly you get half what you expected. There are people that spend a lot of time doing crop estimations, but I usually get rows, and it's pretty consistent from year to year. So I don't really worry too much about what the. I mean, if it looks like there's too much crop out there, we're dropping fruit, right? If it doesn't look like there's any fruit out there, then we probably won't be dropping very much this year. But we go through and do it's called a green harvest everywhere. So at about 90% veraison, or when the grapes have turned color, there'll be some outliers that are just lagging behind. We drop those off to try to tighten up the bell curve a bit in terms of ripeness. But quantity, I think, it's looking like, I would say it's looking like an average crop right now. But after tomorrow, I can tell you whether at least this one Pinot block came in heavy or short. But I would say that it's looking like a pretty much average year. I think I really like the way that this year has played out. We've had a little bit of hot weather, but nothing too bad. And most recently, it's sort of fallen into a really nice cycle: bright, sunny days, moderate temperatures. It'll run us into the 80s. Sometimes it goes up to a 90 and then sort of drops back down later in the afternoon. So I think we're seeing a really lovely pattern right now. We'll see how this plays out into the quality of the wines, but it's reminding me a lot of the way that 2018 played out, and I think that turned out pretty well.
I I try to buy as many 2018s as I can afford. That's
Choice.
kid's birth year.
Is it? Okay, well, there you go. 2018. Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm completely sold out of the Secret Door 2018s, unfortunately, but I have a little bit of Pinot.
Want to get online, I guess. They actually, I for their first day of school, the last day of school, I'll open something up. I'll write what it is, have them pose on a photo with it. So I have my 5-year-olds holding a bottle of wine, but dad gets to drink it.
So child services aren't calling you up when you do this?
Not yet. Not yet. My wife would kill me. My wife, you talk. You have a Korean wife. I have a Chinese wife.
Okay.
If I initially got into trouble for letting the kids drink juice out of Riedel glassware. She said, "Oh, you're trying to encourage them to drink wine." I said, "No." I said, "The juice actually tastes better in Riedel. Use grape juice." And when I actually showed her, she's like, "Oh, okay." And then my kids are now swirling and toasting their apple and grape juice, but they drink more juice out of a Riedel than they do out of a sippy cup or
Yeah.
one.
They it looks fancy. Somebody said, I just read that a couple of wine writers have decided that they're either going to list the weight of the glass bottle or not even taste wines that are in heavy glass bottles. That I thought was kind of interesting because there's evidence, there's actually scientific studies that suggest that the exact same wine is perceived to taste better out of heavy glass bottles. So we wonder why some wineries are using heavier glass for their bottles, because their customers taste the wine and think it tastes better. That's why.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. But wouldn't an easier thing to do is if you're afraid of that variable, have somebody pour for you and not lift the bottle?
Yeah, but remember, like 99% of this stuff is consumed either at home or it's on the table, and people are going to pick that bottle. It also looks different too. I mean, the bottles look different, so it's kind of it's a giveaway that it's probably a heavy bottle. It's like twice the size of the other bottles on the table. Yeah, I like them. I use a fairly heavy glass bottle for the Secret Door stuff because I really like them. I think they're beautiful. Uh, I'm pretty sure that if you have an earthquake in California and this thing hits the floor, it's probably not going to break, where some of those other wimpy little bottles probably will break. But maybe someday I'll stop using these because nobody wants to buy them anymore. But I like them.
Well, I will let you go. Thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you again and meeting you face to face.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great time.
Talk to you soon, Mr.
You
Downey.
too.